With the first week of NFL free agency over and all the big signings predominantly done, I thought we could look at a fresh mock draft with the combine and a lot of the free agent signings over with. Really quickly, though, I just want to give a big shout out to all of you who have joined the channel recently. In halfway through the month of March, we have already exceeded all the subscribers we gained in March of last year. So thank you to everyone who clicked that sub button down below. And if you haven't yet, I recommend you do so. Before we start the mock draft, I just want to lay some ground rules. As we get closer to the draft compared to like January mock drafts, I really try to make my mock drafts all about what would Sean and George Paton do, because that's the most important thing. So this is not a mock draft of my favorite players. This is a mock draft of based on the Paton's tendencies in the past, what we learned at the combine, their biggest needs, some of the draft rumors out there. If you don't like the mock draft, these are not my favorite prospects. These are prospects I could see the Broncos drafting. Last year, I didn't love the idea of drafting Bo Nix. Happy to be wrong about that. But I had Denver taking Bo Nix in pretty much all of my mock drafts. Quick primer, though. These are the picks that Denver is working with. I'll also add that if you want to do your own mock drafts, you might see a few conflicting draft pick numbers and things like that. Not all sites are uniform on who has what pick when it comes to some of these day 3 trades. But anywho, let's get right into the fun. We'll start with round number 1, pick number 20. I'm going to go with UNC running back Omarion Hampton. I believe after not making any move for a running back in free agency, Denver could make that their biggest priority in the draft. And this might be a reach to some, but we learned last year, Sean Payton does not care about what you think of a player or where he should go. If they like a guy, they're going to go get him. And there's a lot to like about Hampton. I called him a bowling ball, and Reed said more like a cannonball. He's got the size and the physicality, but he is not some slowpoke. He may not have insane top speed or long speed, but what he does have is some really tough tendencies, and it takes a group of defenders to take down the Tar Heel. NFL.com's Lance Zierlein compared him to Ramondre Stevenson from the New England Patriots. So when you look over the stats, though, for Hampton, back-to-back seasons where he blossomed in Chapel Hill. 1,500 yards with Drake May in 2023, followed us up with a arguably more impressive 2024 campaign with 1,600 yards and a few more carries on his workload. As for the receiving abilities, I caution anyone to judge a running back's receiving talent based on their receiving stats. Some college offenses just don't have the running back as an option for a quarterback. They keep him in to maybe protect the quarterback, or the quarterback just doesn't go through his reads quick enough to dump it off to the back, and he just throws to the first or second guy in his progressions and never makes it to the third or fourth guy, which could be the back. So don't look at receiving stats and make a conclusion of he's a bad receiving back. No, he just probably didn't get a whole lot of opportunities to showcase his skill set in that department. Now, Hampton is not my second favorite running back even in this draft. For me, it goes Ashton Jeanty, Caleb Johnson, and then Omarion Hampton. But there's been a lot of buzz about the UNC back, and I just think that might be a little bit of a better fit for Sean and George Paton. But don't sleep on Caleb Johnson from Iowa. Now, Denver desperately needs a running back. You cannot trust Jaleel McLaughlin to be your 3-down back next year. I wouldn't even trust these 3 running backs to spearhead or platoon the running back duties. I think an addition has to be made in the first 2 days of the NFL draft. Now, if Hampton is the pick, you in or you out? I can get on board with it. Like I said, this is not a mock draft of my favorite picks. It's a mock draft of what I think's going to happen. And if Hampton's the pick at 20, I will find a way to be half glass full about it. Might be a little bit of a reach, but if he turns out to be a great back, who gives a shit? On to the next selection here. In round 2, I'm going to predict Stanford wide receiver Elic Ayomanor. So he played for the Cardinal last year and originally from Alberta, Canada. So that's always a fun talking point when it comes to prospects. Now, there's a lot to like, though, about Ayomanor. So 6'2", 206 pounds, 4.44 40-yard dash. He's got good NFL prototypical size and speed. He's probably not the best overall pure athlete in this draft, but he's not very far behind. He makes his money on his route winning abilities, though. He really does well when it comes to dissecting zone defenses, finding the soft spot in it, sitting down there, and being a quarterback's go-to man. No, the stats do not do him justice. You don't see 676 yards and 6 touchdowns and think, yeah, rush that in for pick 51. But when it comes to production, I don't really care about it too much for wide receivers. So much factors into it. If you have a bad quarterback, if you're not on a good offense, you're just not going to get the opportunities of a wide receiver on a loaded offense that stays on the field for way more. The Broncos wide receiver room, I think, is okay. I know it doesn't have a ton of whole names across the league, but after watching them play last year, the growth we saw from week 1 to week 18, I'm willing to buy in on this unit with, sure, some more additions like a round 2 pick, but I don't believe that Denver needs to go receiver in round 1. I think they can find a quality player in round 2, and this just feels like a Sean Payton type of receiver, does it not? As for round 3, I'm going to add more to the offense here and select Georgia's right guard, Tate Ratledge. So I had the opportunity, by the way, to stand in front of his podium when he was at the Combine speaking to the media, and he was a really fun interview to go back and forth with. I had some questions for him and whatnot about his time at Georgia. Now, he's one of the most athletic guards. By one of, I mean the most athletic guard in this draft. If you go off the athleticism rankings that the NFL Combine puts together, he played for the Bulldogs 3 seasons as a starter at the right guard position. I'm not drafting him to play right guard for the Broncos. No. I'm bringing in some extra interior offensive line depth because you haven't done that the last draft or so, and it always feels like a good time to replenish in the trenches. And there's a very good chance after 2025, you could be looking for a new left guard and or center. Ben Powers has not quite lived up to the contract. I could see Denver moving on from him after this season. Luke Wattenberg in his first season as a starting center was average on a good day. He could make a big stride, a big step forward in his next year as a starter, but if he doesn't and if Powers doesn't play better, I think adding an extra piece to the interior offensive line could do you wonders in 2026 when you're not looking for a new center or looking for a new guard. You had one that you were grooming for the past year during practice with Ratledge. Before we look at the day 3 selections that I made for George and Sean Payton, if you want more mock drafts, just let me know by subscribing. That way I can get a good pulse of what you guys are looking for over the next month and a half going into the NFL draft. So scroll on down and click that sub button today if you haven't already. Let's run into round number 4, where I'm going to go with Clemson linebacker Barrett Carter. Now, I should also add I use Pro Football Focus as my mock draft simulator. A lot of these mock draft sites are kind of broken. I'd be a little surprised if he fell to round 4, but Troy Franklin fell to round 4 last year, and some people thought he could be a round 2 pick. So as for the background on the former 5-star recruit, he was top 20 nationally coming out of high school, went to Clemson, played as a freshman, and then was a starter the next 3 seasons for the Tigers. He finished as the Butkus Award winner finalist this past year, which is the nation's best linebacker. So there's plenty of accolades, multiple first-team last year first-team All-ACC, the season prior to that, second-team All-ACC. So this is a player that has played good football, maybe didn't quite live up to some of the Clemson expectations, but that does not mean he is not a good football player. I think the numbers last year speak for themselves. He probably didn't have as much production as, Dabo was thinking or looking for when they got him. Coverage is a little bit of a concern. 5 touchdowns allowed, 368 yards, and you're not finding a perfect prospect in round 4 of the draft, day 3 altogether. But I am finding someone who has some really good tape out there. The highlights are there, and he probably needs a year or 2 of some development and coaching. And listen, that's going to happen just fine in Denver because Singleton, He already feels like it's on thin ice a little bit. He only has 1 year left on that contract extension he inked not long ago. So you could draft Carter, sit him for a year to develop and take over from Singleton. Or if Singleton plays well, Dre Greenlaw's contract is structured to be basically a 1 year, $11+ million deal. If he does not stay healthy or he does not look super good, you can move on from him as well. And you've got Carter, who's been developing for a season, along with Drew Sanders, just adding some more competition at that inside backer position. Before we move on to the other picks I made in rounds 5, 6, and 7 of the draft, make sure you check out this really awesome Broncos winter hat on sale. Go to chatsports.com/DEN hat. I put that link in the comments and description of today's video. They have more than this, by the way. They have a lot of other stuff on sale. So if you want to get some Bronco swag, I put this link down below, chatsports.com/DEN hat. Now, I know people don't really care about rounds 6 and 7 of the draft, so we'll kind of rapid fire these ones here. I was looking more for positional value. Jaylin Smith, a corner out of USC. Damari Mathis's future in Denver is bleak at best. Why not add some more depth at a cornerstone position? I also added another safety just because the last couple of safety grabs have not proved to be very fruitful in JL Skinner and Delaire Turner-Yell. So if those are players that you don't think are going to have a role on this team in 2025, how about you go after a Tulane Green Wave safety? And then finally, with the final 6th-round pick, I went with a quarterback. I went with Indiana's Kurtis Rourke. I saw that the Broncos really liked the North Dakota guy. Maybe that's the pick they make. Who knows? But overall, I just feel that with Jarrett Stidham returning, you really only have 2 quarterbacks on the roster. They're going to want 3 or 4 for training camp, and not the worst thing in the world to throw a dart at a quarterback in day 3, just in case something, God forbid, were to happen to Knicks. Or best case scenario, he just turns out to be a good long-term backup for you, and you don't have to constantly go to free agency and give out $6 million contracts. So to recap, these were the money picks, right? Hampton, and then Stanford's wide receiver, Ayomanor, and then Ratledge out of Georgia to add some depth on the offensive line, add some competition to the receiver room, and add a new starting running back with the 20th overall pick. So let me know what you think of my mock draft. Feel free to, roast me. That's like a rite of passage when it comes to mock drafts. Give me an A, B, C, D, or F. These are just picks that I am trying to forecast what the Peyton duo could do. Hey everyone, here are my 7 favorite players for the Broncos. Because I'm not in charge, so who cares?